What if the fastest way to look rich is the exact reason you'll never become rich? Not poor, not broke, just permanently stuck in that weird middle zone where the paycheck is decent, the car looks expensive, the apartment photographs well, the vacations look good online, and yet somehow, year after year, your actual net worth barely moves. That is the trap. And in America, millions of people are living inside it without realizing it. Because we've built an entire culture around performing wealth instead of building it. We reward the appearance of success long before we ever experience the reality of it. The car gets the compliments, the luxury apartment gets the Instagram story, the designer watch gets noticed at dinner. But the brokerage account, the paid off life, the freedom to walk away from a bad job, that part stays invisible. And invisible things are hard for people to value. So today, I want to show you why one person drives a 2011 Honda and quietly buys back their future, while someone else drives a brand new luxury car straight into financial mediocrity. So before you make your next successful purchase, stay with me. Because once you see the math behind this, it becomes very hard to spend the same way again. This is not a story about being cheap. It's not about deprivation or living like you're broke. It's about understanding something that most people in their 20s and 30s genuinely don't grasp. That the gap between looking wealthy and actually being wealthy is one of the most financially destructive forces in American life. The stuff people spend money on to signal success is the exact stuff that prevents success from compounding in the background. And once you see that clearly, you can't unsee it. Here's the data that should shake you. According to the Federal Reserve's most recent survey of consumer finances, the median net worth for Americans aged 35 to 44 is $135,600. That's not savings, that's total net worth, including home equity, retirement accounts, everything. For people 45 to 54, $247,200. For people 55 to 64, the decade right before most people plan to retire, $364,500. That's the median. Half of Americans near retirement age have less than that. Meanwhile, the top 10% of households hold roughly 67% of all wealth in this country. And before you chalk that up entirely to inheritance and connected families, research from the Millionaire Next Door studies shows that a significant portion of high net worth individuals in America are first generation wealthy. They didn't inherit it. They built it by doing something most people find psychologically uncomfortable. They refused to spend money on things designed to make them look successful, and instead used that money to actually become successful. The average new car in America costs around $48,000 right now. The average monthly payment on that car is somewhere north of $700. If instead of that payment, you were routing $700 a month into a total market index fund, earning the historical average, you'd have roughly $1.5 million after 30 years. That's one car payment, and most households in America have two cars. The math on this is brutal, and most people never bother to run it. Here's the deeper problem. The financial signals that our culture treats as success markers, the car, the zip code, the wardrobe, the restaurants, those things are largely invisible in the ledger of actual wealth. A person driving a $70,000 truck might have $14,000 in savings. A person driving a 14-year-old sedan might have a brokerage account that would make your eyes water. We have almost no visual access to actual wealth. We only see the performance of wealth. And because humans are wired for social comparison, we calibrate our spending against what we can see, which is the performance, not the reality underneath it. This is why the people who build real money often look from the outside like they haven't quite figured things out yet. The Honda, the mid-range neighborhood, the boring jacket. Thomas Stanley, the researcher who spent decades studying American millionaires, found that the majority of them didn't drive luxury vehicles, didn't live in the most expensive areas, and actively avoided the visible trappings of wealth. Not because they were miserable, but because they understood that every dollar used to project an image is a dollar that isn't working for them. And at a certain point in the compounding process, that distinction becomes almost irrelevant, but you have to survive long enough to get there. The $4 million number in the title isn't random. It's roughly what a 25-year-old would accumulate by 65 if they redirected $1,000 a month. The rough equivalent of a modest car payment, a slightly smaller apartment, and a few lifestyle trims into a diversified index fund and left it alone. 40 years, $1,000 a month, historical average returns, $4 million. Not guaranteed, not a promise, but a historically grounded projection. And the uncomfortable question you have to sit with is this: what are you spending that $1,000 on instead? And is it worth $4 million to you? Because that's actually the trade, not car versus no car, not nice apartment versus dump. The trade is, what does this spending cost me in future dollars? And does that exchange make sense? Most people never frame it that way. They think about monthly payments, not compounded opportunity cost. They think about what something costs today, not what that same money becomes in 30 years. And the financial industry, the car dealers, the mortgage lenders, the credit card companies, they are not going to explain this to you. Their business model depends on you not running that math. Let's run the actual math on two people making identical incomes, because the numbers are more disturbing than most people expect. Person A earns $85,000 a year. She takes home around $5,800 a month after taxes. She drives a 2022 Audi A4, a $640 a month lease. Rents a two-bedroom apartment in a nice part of town for $2,100. Shops at the mid to upper range, eats out frequently, takes 2 vacations a year, contributes 3% to her 401k to get the employer match, and figures she'll invest more when things settle down. At the end of each month, she has maybe $200 left over. She's not reckless. She just spends at the level her income seems to justify. Person B earns the same $85,000, takes home the same $5,800. He drives a 2011 Honda CR-V he bought outright for $9,500, no payment. Rents a one-bedroom for $1,500 in a slightly less trendy but perfectly functional neighborhood. Cooks most of his meals. Takes one vacation a year, usually off-peak. Maxes his Roth IRA at $625 a month. Contributes 10% to his 401k, about $580 a month after taxes. Invests another $300 in a taxable brokerage. He's putting away roughly $1,500 a month, total, every month, on the same income. After 30 years at 10% average annual returns, Person A's 3% contribution, roughly $174 a month, grows to approximately $395,000. Respectable, but not retirement money at today's cost of living. Person B's $1,500 a month becomes approximately $3.4 million. Same income, same economy. The difference is entirely allocation. Person A spent her leverage on an experience of living that felt good in the moment. Person B spent his leverage on future optionality. Neither of them made a mathematical error. They just valued different things. Here's the counterintuitive part that most people resist. Person B isn't suffering. That's what the narrative around frugality gets catastrophically wrong. Framing this as deprivation keeps people from doing it. But the actual felt difference in quality of life between a leased Audi and a reliable used Honda is, for most people, close to zero after the first few weeks of ownership. The psychological research on hedonic adaptation is clear. Humans return to a baseline happiness level surprisingly quickly after both positive and negative changes in material circumstances. The $640 Audi payment generates a dopamine hit when you drive off the lot. By month 3, it's just a car payment. The Honda, also just a car. The difference is the $640 a month, every month. for the rest of the decade. This is what behavioral economists call the consumption trap. We overestimate the sustained utility of expensive purchases. We buy the thing. The pleasure fades faster than we predicted, and we're left with the ongoing cost. Run that dynamic across a lease, a house too big for your actual needs, a wardrobe refresh every season, and the aggregate is enormous. Nobody goes broke buying one nice thing. People go broke through sustained lifestyle inflation that tracks their income growth dollar for dollar, leaving zero margin for compounding. The second misconception worth destroying is that this only applies to people who are irresponsible or financially unsophisticated. Smart, educated, high earning professionals fall into this exact trap constantly. Actually, higher income often makes it worse because the spending options scale up too. A doctor earning $250,000 can lose the compounding game just as thoroughly as a teacher earning $55,000. If the doctor's lifestyle eats $245,000 a year, income is not the variable. The spread between income and spending is the variable. That spread, multiplied by time and compounded returns, is your entire financial future. The third misconception, and this one stings, is that investing is something you do with money left over after living your life. That framing guarantees there will never be money left over. Real wealth building requires treating investment contributions the way you treat rent, non negotiable, not subject to negotiation with yourself after a bad week, automated before your brain has a chance to redirect the money somewhere visible. The people who hit eight-figure portfolios from middle-class incomes didn't invest what was left. They lived on what was left after investing. Now, here's the part that's actually hard to hear. Most people reading this know everything I just said. They've heard the compound interest lecture. They understand the math abstractly. The problem isn't knowledge. The problem is that the alternative, spending money on things that make you look and feel successful right now, has an immediate reward structure. Compound growth doesn't. Telling your future self you'll have $3 million at 65 produces no emotional response that competes with the feeling of pulling up in a car that makes people notice. The brain doesn't process 40-year payoffs the way it processes immediate status signals. This isn't weakness, it's just how human wiring works. So the look poor strategy isn't really about looking poor. It's about consciously opting out of the status signaling game long enough to actually win the underlying wealth game. Driving the Honda isn't a sacrifice if you understand what the Honda represents. Every month that car doesn't have a payment is another $600 that compounds quietly in the background, doubling every 7 years, building something that no leased vehicle has ever built for anyone. The Honda is not the point. The freed cash flow is the point. So what do you actually do with this? Because the philosophy is easy to nod at and hard to execute. Here's the sequence in order, no exceptions. First, find your spread. Pull up your last 3 months of bank and credit card statements. Add up everything, not just the obvious stuff. Subscriptions, food delivery, the gym you go to twice a year, the streaming services you forgot about, total monthly take-home income, minus total monthly outflows. Whatever that number is, that's your current spread. If it's negative or close to zero, you don't have an income problem yet. You have an allocation problem. The question is how to widen it. The levers are almost never where people think they are. Small purchases don't move the number meaningfully. The real leverage is in what researchers call the big three: housing, transportation, and food. These three categories alone account for more than 60% of average American household spending. A decision to live 10 minutes farther from the trendy neighborhood can free $400 to $600 a month. Driving a paid-off car instead of leasing something newer can free $600 to $800 a month. Cooking 4 more nights a week can free $200 to $300 a month. Those three changes, none of them dramatic, can create $1,200 to $1,700 in monthly spread almost immediately. At $1,400 a month invested for 30 years at historical returns, you're looking at $3.1 million. Three decisions: one decade of consistency, generational financial difference. Second, automate ruthlessly. The moment your paycheck hits your account, money needs to move before your brain has a chance to make other plans. If your employer offers a 401k with a match, contribute at minimum whatever percentage unlocks the full match. That's an immediate, guaranteed 50% to 100% return on that money before it's invested in anything. Then Roth IRA, $7,500 a year in 2026 if you're under 50, $8,600 if you're 50 or older. Set up an auto contribution on the first of every month. If you're eligible for an HSA through a high deductible health plan, max that too. It's $4,400 for individual coverage in 2026 and has a triple tax advantage that no other account in the American financial system matches. Contributions are pre-tax, growth is tax-free, withdrawals for medical expenses are tax-free. Nothing else does all three. After those are funded, open a taxable brokerage account if you have more to invest. Fidelity and Schwab are the practical choices. No minimums, no commissions, clean interfaces, strong customer service. Within every one of these accounts, keep it boring. VTI or VOO, total market or S&P 500. Expense ratio under 0.05%. That's it. Set the auto invest, pick your fund, close the app. You do not need to watch this. Watching it creates the urge to react, and reacting to short-term market movement is how people permanently impair their returns. Now, the objection I hear constantly: I don't make enough to invest meaningfully. Let's kill that. $200 a month. Less than most people spend on food delivery and coffee combined. Invested at 10% for 35 years is $640,000. Not a fortune, but it's $640,000 more than zero, and it's built on $84,000 of actual contributions. The rest is compounding. If you're 35 and think you're too late, you're not. $800 a month from 35 to 65 at historical returns is $1.8 million. You do not need a 25-year runway. You need whatever runway you actually have, used as aggressively as your real expenses allow. The second objection: I have debt. I should pay that off first. Depends entirely on the interest rate. Anything above 7%, credit cards, personal loans, high-rate auto loans, pay that aggressively first. High-interest debt is a guaranteed negative return. Anything below 4%, low-rate student loans, some mortgages, the expected return from investing likely outpaces the interest cost. Between 4% and 7% is a judgment call, but many people use a hybrid approach: minimum payments on the lower rate debt while still investing something. Because the psychological momentum of seeing a brokerage account grow matters. It keeps you in the game. The third objection, this one's more honest, is social. My friends will think I'm struggling. This is real. Opting out of visible spending creates friction in social environments where spending is how people bond and signal belonging. There is no perfect answer here, but most people who have done this report that the social discomfort fades as the account grows, and that eventually the freedom becomes the signal, the ability to quit a job you hate, to take 3 months off, to never look stressed about money in a conversation, to retire before everyone else. That's a status signal too. It just runs on a different clock. One more thing. The 2011 Honda in the title isn't metaphor, it's math. A 14-year-old CRV purchased for $9,000 to $12,000 cash has no monthly payment, lower insurance premiums, and gets you to work identically to a $50,000 vehicle. The person in the newer car isn't arriving at the destination faster. They're just paying $700 a month to feel a certain way during the commute. And for $700 a month over 40 years, you could feel a certain way in retirement instead. Specifically, the feeling of having options, of never being trapped by an employer, of your money producing more money than your labor ever could. Open the account today. Set the auto transfer this week. Pick one fund. Don't touch it until you're 60. The Honda pays for itself about 40 times over.